Hi traders, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to go back to the basics. I'm going to be making a video going over all the principles of volume profile. This is going to be geared towards people that have no knowledge or very little knowledge about volume profile, and I'm just going to go over all the elements of it, the settings that I use, and the different types of volume profiles that we have available. Okay, as always, if you want to learn more about volume profile, you can check out the trading education playlist here on my YouTube channel, as well as you can check out my trading courses where we go into a lot more in-depth strategies and teachings as well. Okay, so let's first start off briefly talking about volume. Volume is one of the most basic indicators that are used in trading. Volume basically measures the buying and selling activity of traders in any market that we are looking. Now, traditionally, volumes, you would think of volume as an indicator that is measured down in the time scale. So something like this, where we have, this is a 1 hour SP 500 futures market chart, so the ES. I'm using TradingView for this video, but obviously you can use all this volume profile indicators on almost any platform that is available. Okay, so this volumes down below, in this case, each one of these volume bars corresponds to 1 hourly candlestick on the chart. The bigger the volume bar is, obviously that means the more selling volume executions that have happened. The bigger the green ones is, the bigger the buying executions happen. And we can use this on any time frame. If I go down into a 5-minute chart, you can see, for example, here we have very little volumes during the extended trading hours and very large volumes in the regular market hours. Okay, but we're gonna come back to this later in the video. For now, I just want you to understand the main difference between regular time-based volumes and what we know as volume profile. Volume profile is a measurement of the buying and selling activity, but instead of happening down in the horizontal axis, it is going to go in the price or the vertical axis. So if I go and I just take a anchored volume profile, and let's say I'm going to start it out from this side over here, this is a volume profile basically. So we have a volume profile on the price scale, and what this is measuring is the buying and selling activity on a horizontal plane. So instead of saying, oh, we're buying or selling X amount of contracts on this 1 hour candlestick, what we're doing is saying we're selling or buying X amount of contracts at this price point. Okay, so instead of volume by time, we're measuring volume by price. Okay, so now that we know the basic differences between the time and price volume, let's go and look at the different elements of a volume profile. Okay, so this is the same range volume profile that I put, only instead of having it on the right edge of the chart, I'm just putting it right over here at the first anchor point where I started. So this volume profile is basically measuring all the trading activity that happened from this point up to the current price that we have. So let's take off the candlesticks and only leave the volume profile so we can define all the different elements that make it up. So I took off the candlesticks from the chart. So let's talk about all the different elements in a volume profile. First thing we're going to have is the volume profile extremes, meaning the top and the bottom. This is basically going to show us the entire range of price that we are measuring from the lowest swing low to the highest swing high. Okay. After that, we're going to have what we call the value area, which in this case is the darker gray shaded area. Okay. The value area corresponds to 68 or 70% of all the volume that was traded within this range that we are analyzing. So that means that 68% of all the volume in this period was traded inside of this darker gray area. Now, where does the number 68 come from? Okay, this is related to a bell curve distribution. Okay, so this is just an image of a classic bell curve distribution where we have the mean right here in the middle, and then you can see we have one standard deviation to either side, which measures 34.13 each. So if we add up the one standard deviation to each side, we get 68.26. Normally, most platforms by default are going to make the value area 70%. I just like to use 68% to be a little bit more precise, okay? So now that we know what the value area is, then we have the borders of the value area. So on top, we're going to have what we call the value area high, which is the level where the top of the value area, and on the bottom we're going to have the value area low. Okay, now the next element is going to be called the point of control. Okay, the point of control corresponds to the point in the whole profile with the most volume traded, which in this case you can see it defined by that thick orange line, and it's very easy to see because you're simply just going to look for the point that is sticking out the most of the profile. Okay, so that will be the point of control for this entire volume profile. Okay, and then after that, the last two elements that we're going to be looking at is what we call high volume nodes. This corresponds to the areas that are sticking out the most in the chart. This is the areas that have accumulated the most volumes, and you're going to notice as we look at examples later that those areas always coincide with where market is ranging or just trading a lot through, which makes sense because if you have a price area that is traded through a lot, you expect a lot of trading volume and executions to be happening in that area. Okay, and the last element that we have is what we know as low volume nodes. This is going to be the opposite of the high volume nodes. Low volume nodes are going to be the areas where we see drop-offs or cut-offs in the volumes, and you're going to look at it as little voids at the edges of the high volume nodes. These areas on the chart are going to correspond with areas where we're going to see more price rejections. Okay, and so we're going to talk more about that later. I actually have the most popular video on my channel, which is called the #1 volume profile trading rule, and I'm going to put a link to that in the pinned comment below. But I talk on that video how I mostly focus on taking trades around the low volume node areas because these are the levels where I expect to see rejections. around the high volume node areas, price tends to get choppier. They act as a magnet area because it is areas where there's been a consensus between buyers and sellers back and forth in the auction process. And so price tend to gravitate and trade a lot around those levels. So it's not really good to get in right around high volume node middle areas, whereas it's a lot better to look for low volume node entries. Okay, and now if I bring back the candlesticks right there, you can see what we were talking about. Right here, for example, the point of control, you can see there's been a lot of trading going around at this price. So all these areas were just accumulating volumes right around what would be the 59.50 level, pretty much in the S&P 500. But then also one thing to note, within the main high volume node, which in this case would be something like this, you know, we have other smaller nodes, like this is a smaller high volume node, this is a smaller high volume node, etc. And each one of these is going to have their own little point of control, like these areas right here. All the little areas that are sticking out are going to be the specific points of control for this high volume node areas. And if you see what I talked about, rejection areas in the low volume nodes, for example here, we can see volumes dropped off here, and you can see this was an area of support that got broken. So usually at the low volume node areas, you're going to see that price doesn't spend a lot of time in these areas. These are areas where price is either going to reject from or is going to trade through very quickly. So for example, here you can see rejections, a very quick candle, some rejection, and now we're rejecting from on top. Rejection. This one right here, we had support here, traded through very quickly, rejection, trade through quickly, then rejections again, trade through quickly. Same thing here, trade through quickly, support, trade through quickly. So these areas, we don't accumulate volumes because price is spending very little time around those areas. Okay? Now let's talk briefly about the settings. I'm not going to go a lot deep into this because I made several videos on this on my channel already, which again you can find in the educational playlist. And also I'm going to put down in the pinned comment a guide that I have on the 2 best volume profile tools that are free on TradingView, the fixed range volume profile and the anchored volume profile, which is what I use the most. So I'm going to put that down below as well. Okay. But the 2 main settings I wanted to look at is the inputs and the style. So row layouts, number of rows or tick per rows. Tick per rows, I would generally, if I'm trading like the CME futures like NASDAQ or the S&P 500, I want to put this as low as possible, okay? Because the higher the tick per row is, the less definition the profile has. If I put 20, you can see that the profile is going to start looking a lot chunkier. If I raise this even more to 40, you can see that it's starting to lose definition. So if you're using ticks per row, the lower the number, the more defined it is going to be. And I like it to be very defined because that way I can really see the contours of the high volume nodes and low volume node areas. If I'm using number of rows, I want to use a big number, because see, when you use number of rows is the opposite. The less rows you use, the chunkier is going to look, because this is going to be based on the price scale. So if I put row size 50, that means for this whole range of prices of the profile from here down to here, I'm only going to have 50 rows on my profile. Whereas if I increase this to 200, now I'm going to have 200 rows, okay? So in general, you can put whatever number you want here. In general, I like to just go for a very high number. I put like 2,000, even though I might not get up to 2,000. But I found that 2,000 number rows is a good universal number that works pretty much on any market that I'm looking at on TradingView. Now, volume, up, down, this measures the difference between up and down, and then delta, this measures the difference between buying, selling. But honestly, especially if you're working in TradingView, there's no real tick data, so I would recommend just use total volume. That is what I use almost 90% of the time, except if I want to use something like a delta volume profile, which is a whole other topic that we're not going to get into now, that is a little bit more advanced. Delta is simply the measurement of executed buys minus executed sells. So that gives you a measure of the aggressiveness of buyers or sellers. That is something that is used a lot more in order flow trading. So for now, just focus on total volume for the volume profiles. Value area, like I said, 68%. And then style, the percentage width is just how wide you want it. And then this is just for the coloring. Up volume is going to be the areas outside of the value area. And value area up is going to be obviously the value area. I don't really care about the down volume, because again, if we're using up and down, then that's where this will come into play. But since I'm only using total, then just the up volume and value area up, this is the only two colorings that I need, okay? And then here, value area high, value area low, point of control. You can enable them. You can change the color, the type of line. I'm used to using orange, and I like to use a dash for the value areas lines and a solid one for the point of control. Developing POC and value area, I don't use that, but that just shows you how the profile has been evolving as it's developed. Histogram box is just to add a background if it makes it a little easier to identify where the profile starts. Okay, so that's pretty much the basics of the settings here on TradingView that I like to use for the profiles. Now let's go and look at the type of volume profiles that we'll generally have available. Okay, so just a note, in TradingView, you do get two types of fixed range volume profiles for free, and you can find those on the left hand side under this menu right here. So let's start off talking about fixed range volume profiles. Like the name implies, a fixed range volume profile is simply going to be a profile where you click on the starting point and then you just drag it until the point that you want. So I can take it all the way to the end, click again, and there we have our fixed range volume profile. One thing I recommend, you can see the profile is covering the candlesticks, so you can just right click on it, put visual order, send to back, and that way it'll send it back and your candlesticks are going to come to the front. Okay, now the fixed range, there's a setting here which I generally have on, which is called extend right. That means that you just click on the first point and it'll always keep extending all the way to the end. If the market is open, each candle that it prints is going to keep extending up to the latest price. Okay, but if you just want to analyze a specific segment, you can take this setting off, and let me add the background so it's easier to identify what I'm going to do. If you take that setting off, let's say I only want to measure from this low to, I don't know, to this high right here. So then I can just click on this and you see these little bubbles here. You just grab it. I drag it back to this high, let it go, and see now you have a profile that is only going from point A to point B that I marked off. Okay? The second type of fixed range profile, which was recently added, is what was called the anchored volume profile. This one, you just click on one point. I'm going to click again on this swing low, and it's going to throw a profile here. Right there. Let me just enable these things. Okay, right there. Okay, so what I like about this anchored volume profile is that it's going to let me put the profile all the way against the edge. Generally, this is how I like to have my longer term profiles, against the right side of the screen, but there is a setting to take it to the left side as well if you prefer. Okay, and you can just grab the point and just drag it in order to change the range of what the profile is going to be looking at. Okay, so that is the fixed range volume profile. The next type of profile, which in this case is only available if you have a pro plan, but again, this can be used on any other platform, Sierra Chart, Quant Tower, Atas, anything that you prefer to use. You go to indicators, technicals, profiles. Next one I'm going to talk about is the periodic. The periodic, as the name implies, is going to make a profile based on an X number of periods that you select. So if you go to input, let's go down into an hourly time frame, and you can see this is set as a weekly profile. So if I zoom out, and you can change this, to any market that you want. In this case, I'm in the NASDAQ 1 hour chart, so you can see each one of these profiles is going to be covering 1 week of action from Sunday night to Friday afternoon. Sunday night to Friday afternoon. If I go into another market, like for example, crypto, if I go to Bitcoin, obviously this market never closes. So this is going to go from the weekly open on Sunday night until the next Sunday night, then the Sunday night to the next Sunday night. I mean, I'm talking about Eastern time in New York. This is going to depend where you live, but basically it's an entire week of action. And this works, on any market. If I go into a Forex market, that is going to be same thing here. This is a Euro US dollar market. So again, this is going to go from Monday to Friday weekly. You can change this and put monthly. And now you have a profile for the entire month. This one is January, that is still underway. etc. Okay, so the periodic, simply you can split up the profiles in whatever set periods you want. The next type of profile that we're going to talk about is called the visible range volume profile. The visible range profile is going to be a dynamic profile that is going to show you a profile of whatever it's on the screen at the time. So you can see, for example, here, this is the highest point and the lowest point. So that coincides with the visible range profile. But if I was to move this chart back, you can see the profile now starts changing. Now it's only going to show me a profile for whatever it is on the screen at the moment, right there. And if I keep moving back, it's going to keep changing and just adapting to whatever candles I am showing on the chart. Okay, I don't use this as much because I generally like to just have a fixed range that I am analyzing, but some people like this just because they can keep moving the chart and the profile is just going to keep adapting to whatever is on the screen. Okay, and the last volume profile we're going to talk about is the sessions volume profile. I use this every day when I'm day trading. Specifically, this is a very useful indicator, and you can find it indicators, technicals, profiles, and here's session volume profile. I use this to day trade the CME futures, ES, and NQ, the SP 500 and NASDAQ. And how this is going to be split is, so for this, we would go in this case from 6 p.m. Eastern time all the way until 9:30 a.m. Eastern the next day. This will be what we call extended market hours. And then regular market hours are from 9:30 a.m. Eastern to 5 p.m. This is the greatest volume, and this is when the stock market is open. So this is the ideal times I feel to be trading it. Okay. And what I like about the session volume profile is that it gives you a lot of very important reference points to look for in future sessions. So you can see, for example, here, generally regular trading hours are going to take more importance than extended hours because there's a lot more volumes, and this is where most of the institutional players are going to be executing as well. But the extended hours hold definite significance. Like you can see right here, we had the extended trading hours, and then we had this value area high line, which ended up being the exact tops and rejection points during this regular market hours, for example. So I always like to focus on the elements that we have on the chart. So that will be everything we've talked about. The value area, the value area high, value area low, point of control, the individual high volume nodes, like here, etc. All these different elements I'm going to be focusing on for the next sessions. And again, I go into a lot of in-depth strategies on this on my trading courses as well. But that is pretty much all the main types of volume profiles that we have available. Okay, that's pretty much it for the video. Hope this has been informative to all of you. Again, I recommend you check out all my educational videos. You can just search for volume profile on my channel and you'll get tons of free content there. So that's it for now, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.